Beyond his brilliant understanding of figures of speech, Peter knows a great deal about the figures that add up to justice, the startling statistics of who gets locked up in modern America. And he knows about the human figures, black, brown, and poor, who end up in prison because of their color, not just their character. I have occasionally accompanied Peterson as he burrows beneath the dingy confinement of dangerous human flesh inside jails and prisons. He has what can only be an ethnography of imprisonment by incarcerated what they think and feel. I have seen him ask about their mental and physical health, and about their faith, before he rages, quietly and with great intelligence, against the force that got them incarcerated. In terms at once poetic and practical, he translates Michel reflections on discipline and punishment, or rap legend Nas's epistle to a prison comrade, and the brutal logic of the streets, failing to think with them about the choices they made, choices that, in part, made them. Because I am a clergyman, I viewed what Peterson was doing as ministry, indeed the most complicated and substantive ministry one imagine without the proselytizing that is often evangelists' most concern. Of course, it is more than a little ironic that Peterson hails professionally from Pennsylvania, where a couple of centuries back urged offenders to search their consciences in solitary confinement to piece back together their fractured lives, a fateful Peterson skillfully deconstructs. Peterson's mission in prison was different. He offered the victims of societal structures and behaviors an edifying twist on their destinies by urging them to become more conscious of what was being done and what they were doing to themselves in a society that cared little about function and punished them the same. Punished them all the same. The matters of color and class and age and gender have to be figured in to recognize just how unjust our criminal justice often is. Peterson the ethnography of imprisonment in the situations he encountered, but he offered an on-the-spot, grassroots phenomenology of incarceration, a brief burst of empirical engagement with the entangled dynamics that got imprisoned in the place. Consider Prison Industrial Complex for Beginners, the extended version of Peterson's daring and compelling prison interventions. The industrial in the title is more formal than substantial, a mark of the evolving understanding of a phenomenon with roots in the industrial era but that extends forward into the hyper-technological present. The means of surveillance and security, part of the amped-up today might shift in terminology prison digital complex, but then we'd lose the allusion to President Dwight Eisenhower's military and real complex, every other variant of the term that seeks an area of government responsibility and private industry. In Eisenhower's case, it was the connection between the U.S. military and the defense industry. In the present case, it's the unseemly alliance between the nation's criminal justice system and the prison and punishment industry. Peterson, like social theorist Mises who invented the term, has chosen to prison industrial complex this fight, and he's done. Those of us who read his book for beginners are the. It's all here too, the things you need to know in order to understand how a behemoth and out-of-control system has taken root and colored our of criminal justice, how it has been the need to reform the reformers, the John Wayne-infused Western frontier mythology that fuels the right-wing ideology of law and order, in which the ostensible protectants servants of the law instead serve disorder and fuel injustice. Here is the chaotic and disastrous war on drugs, too often a proxy war against people of color. Here, in stark reality and detail, privatization of prisons and the enormous, often immoral, profits that flow from vulnerable bodies that are too often young, colored, female, and foreign. For indeed the nation's immigration policies and the dreadful concomitant of solitary confinement have extended the international reach of our belligerently bloated prison industrial complex. And here is the suspect logic that drives both the paranoia about racism, which the legendary black preacher William Augustus Jones Jr. defined as a return in degree to a state of being, alluding in my view to the return of America to a racist past when it benefited from unpaid black labor, the imprisonment that it, and the flawed ideals of prison reform that don't address the structural features of racial and class oppression. This book is a sublimely useful powder keg, an explosive gathering of insight, information and, yes, inspiration, for us to act on what Peterson has learned and what he so valiantly teaches us. The ideas here can't be restricted to those whose lives the prison industrial complex immediately impacts. Neither can they be confined to the souls whose existence is transformed by a loved one being locked away in hopeless dungeons of often unjust punishment. The bitter truth is that prisons affect all of us. We are all, to a degree, imprisoned by our thirst for the exclusion from society of its most vicious members. But the idea that prisons in America contain only the bodies of the righteously confined has been demolished by the volume of data rushing toward us from study after study, from book after book. Such work proves that our unstated class and color vengeance, and the rot of our gender bias, has spoiled our system of discipline and punishment. From the principal's office where kids of color are often unfairly expelled, to jails where youth of color are often undeservedly detained, to prisons where adults of color are often unjustly confined. This book is Peterson's beautiful argument against an ugly reality. Peterson and I often talk about the difficulties of doing work inside prisons and even just visiting them. My brother Everett has been incarcerated for nearly 30 years. But we never mistake our grief at being searched or the feeling of doom at doors being locked behind us as anything remotely approaching the dread and horror that those who are imprisoned must face every day. We simply pledge to never let those on the outside forget what those on the inside see and do, what they feel and think, what they experience and endure, and what we must do to bring an end to this grave injustice. James Braxton Peterson has kept his end of the bargain with this searing, insightful, and humane missive from a region where his brain and heart intersect. He sets his mind free to imagine what, hopefully one day soon, people who are unjustly imprisoned, and even those who deserve a measure of punishment, can experience too. Ebony magazine is one of the 100 most influential Black Michael Eric Dyson is a renowned public intellectual, media commentator, and best-selling author. His recent book is The Black Presidency, Barack Obama, Politics of Race in America, 2016. The university professor of sociology at Georgetown University, Dyson appears regularly on TV as an analyst of political, racial, and cultural issues in America today. He is also an ordained Baptist minister, host of the Michael Eric Dyson Show on National Public Radio.